electric infrastructure from the North Fork because there's more power there. There was like a battery option. There was, I think, a gas peaker plant option too. And they claim that the SouthFork Wind Project was the cheapest project to deliver energy there. And I keep reading that offshore wind is almost the same price. They are doing some incentives. Some states are doing incentives, but a lot of companies claim that it's going to save people money compared to building a gas plant. So they're running the numbers. I'm not deep in the numbers, but it doesn't sound like it's a total boondoggle or it's going to raise your rate more than it would have with gas or nuclear. Because we need more power because people just keep using power.
Right. that ain't ending.
So one thing I thought was really interesting in doing the research for this was one of the companies who got the bids is Equinor, which is a bit of a lightning rod lately. They are, for those of you who are not familiar, they're the company that are planning on drilling off the Great Bight off southern Australia, and that's become a real hot topic amongst surfers. The fear of oil being drilled and then having like a Deepwater Horizon type of accident happen. They definitely don't have the best track record in terms of safety. So I find it really interesting that all of a sudden, they do wind farms. And then I started reading, not only do they do wind farms, they have floating wind farms to help power their oil rigs, which is really weird to me.
I knew they had floating. I didn't know if they were specifically for something. But
yeah, they're there to power their oil rigs.
Wow.
Which is kind of ironic and odd.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have enough extra gas to Yeah, and we can talk about floating.
That sounds like it's like a Montgomery Burns Simpson like thing. Yes, wind power to power the oil. Recycling.
Yeah, I mean it's creepy. These are really large companies.
Yeah.
Equinor is Norwegian.
Yeah.
They have tons of oil still. Orsted, I believe, is all renewables. I think they sold all their oil to some other company.
Okay.
But they're all
probably
coming
sold it
from
to Equinor.
Yeah, they're all coming from an oil background because those are the people that have been working offshore, and those are the people that have been building wind turbines offshore in Europe for 20, 30 years. So
should we be encouraging them more? Should we be hesitant, nervous because of their track record? Should we trust what they say?
I don't know. I don't worry that they're, some people are like, oh, they're not from here. They're from Norway. And I'm like, well, okay. And yeah, they do oil. So I went to a wind conference and I was not surprised that it was a bunch of like bros in suits,
nice.
Because it's like hedge fund money, and people that do big offshore projects, oil or wind. So it's not a bunch of hippies, that's for sure.
Well, there's a lot of money, and it's a future. It's going to be a major future source. So I guess should we be encouraging working with these companies? Should we be hesitant? Does Surfrider? Do you guys do deep dives into these companies and their history?
We trust the permitting process enough that we'll get down to the actual impacts. They're an oil company, but they're building a wind turbine, so we just have to look at what does that turbine do, what does it do to the environment. If they had a history of like turbines exploding, then maybe we'd be concerned, but that doesn't seem to be a thing.
Not yet.
And if a turbine explodes, I don't want to make light of a possible industrial accident. No. It's not like a oil
or
rig.
gas.
No.
Yeah.
It just burns a little bit, and that's about it as far as I've seen.
Going back to sort of the bros in suits and the way that the renewable sector has shifted from maybe engineers and hippies and optimists and utopian worldview to big business. And it's like, I guess I'm at a point where if it's getting the technology online faster, and if it's Wall Street that's driving it, then maybe that's just what needs to take place, and that the more mainstream these technologies are, then great, we're not burning fuel anymore. Now, I would say maybe if there's ever a point when they're unprofitable and the mission of getting renewables diverts from the shareholders need to make money, maybe that's the problem too. But do we have to have these cultural purity tests specific to the technology side of it?
I mean, sadly, we don't really have a choice. If we think these turbines are not going to hurt the environment and are going to help climate change, the only people building them are the Equinors and the Shells, and because they're huge. It's like building an airplane. Like, there's only a few companies that do that, and who knows who they are. But well, wait, we do. It's Boeing.
Right.
And they've been lying. That's a different
Airbus.
podcast. Different podcast.
Air Max. Whatever.
That's next week. That's
737.
Now, let's talk about the floating wind farms for a second, because you seem to express interest here and have some knowledge in this.
Yeah, I mean that.
What's the difference between the stationary and the floating ones, and what are the advantages and disadvantages?
My understanding was that Equinor has a commercial size floating. I didn't know about this connection to oil rigs, but my understanding is they have one that's been up for a few years, so it's still pretty new.
Yeah.
It's not coming in the next few years like the stuff off of New York might be coming. But if they can figure it out, it might be able to work in places like California where it gets really deep right off the coast, and you can't pile drive a turbine in. It's too deep. But those are even more complicated because you have more things floating, because they have like guy wires that's how they connect them. So you have more things, and you have the power cords between the turbines are also floating. So you have more things for things like a whale to run into, or a ship, or a fisherman. So those, it's still unclear.
And how do they handle in rough surf? That's
supposedly, I mean, the ones Equinor have, I believe, are in the North Sea. So if they haven't sunk yet, then I think they'll probably figure it out. But there seems to be maybe a little more impact from those. So we'll have to see. Those are still down the road a ways.
Overall, where are we with in this sort of race to decarbonize? Have we put to bed nuclear power as this, like, we don't like it? I'm talking about from the environmental science point of view, but we don't like nuclear power. It has tons of risk, but it's carbon. I mean, it's not CO2 producing.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting pretty far out of Surfrider's purview, but there's been a huge fight, I'd say, between environmental groups. Some saying we should build, maybe not environmental groups, but some people, we should build nuclear because it doesn't have any carbon, as you're saying. And then some people are saying, shut them all down. And then some people are saying, well, if you already built it, why shut it down? You already built it. You already used all the carbon in the concrete. Keep it running as long as it's safe, and then shut it down. It's a tough one. I mean, basically, nuclear, as far as I've read, is so much more expensive that nobody wants to build it, and then they've basically lost their social, what's that called? Their social license to operate. Nobody wants a nuclear power plant.
Nobody.
I read about one in Georgia that's kind of the most recent one they've been trying to build. It was supposed to be done 5 years ago. It's way over budget. It sounds like it'll never happen. So it seems like nuclear and coal are basically going to the dustbin. So now it's a fight.
I don't know about nuclear, because I just read an article recently that there's a different material that they can use instead of what's it called? Why is it
plutonium?
The plutonium, it's something other than plutonium that breaks down faster and it's not as radioactive.
Out of my knowledge base. Like, how does a nuclear reaction work? Walk us through it.
Walk us through it, Doc. But there are some new new ways to extract nuclear energy without having to have that much radiation in order for it to be as dangerous.
Okay.
I have to find this article somewhere. It was really fascinating.
I mean, they're always talking about that, like these new ones, or what's the one like,
fusion
in the Spider-Man movie?
Cold
like,
fusion.
Cold fusion is always around the corner. I mean, right now it seems algae seems like it's a real battle right now between wind, solar, and natural gas.
Yeah,
those are the cheapest.
Yeah,
I'm all for hooking all the Peloton and SoulCycle bikes.
Why we haven't tapped into the
I don't understand human
clubs.
Power.
Pelotonium.
But
Pelotonium.
So in terms of like messaging and communication, which Surfrider does really well, what I've noticed, and I'm not sure if you're using this language, but just even in the last year, this term of climate extinction, the word, using the word extinction for, it seemed to elevate the language, escalated probably to the appropriate level it should have been at a while ago. But now I'm just sort of hearing it as this fixed piece among a lot of younger kids, but and this is in a part because of AOC and the Green New Deal and this like very concerted, focused language on what's going on with climate change. But just the word of extinction, I mean, that just brings it right in.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was trying to say, that climate change is the real driver and hammer of all this stuff because the impacts are so bad, and I think people are finally starting to get it. I think in part because we're seeing it with insane hurricanes, insane rainstorms, fires on the whole West Coast. People seem to finally get it, and the reports saying 10 to 11 years to really avoid things really going to hell. So, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough call, but we need all renewable energy. And I just saw an article last week, I think it was the New York Times, saying all the solar and all the wind we have, in the pipeline is still not enough right now. It's not enough. We need to go even further to avoid the worst effects. So, I don't want to just say build them everywhere. I don't care, and like ruin the environment by building the solution. Yeah. But you have to try to remember that. I think what we're up against.
It always, to me, like I feel like the way to convince a lot of people is to talk about how it affects their pocketbook, and I feel like there's not as much conversation with that. So I do sales. I sell to a lot of retail stores around the country. No one is talking about how these weather events are affecting our economy. Yeah. So my sales took a hit. I've seen sales take a hit in many regions. So I have a lot of customers in Houston getting washed out. The last 3 years, they had 2 hurricanes that totally wiped out numerous businesses of mine. Yeah. I have a lot of accounts in California, Northern California, Oregon, who those fires have totally, I have accounts that I'm not going to hear from again, and no one's going to start over again. I had another account that got hit by tornadoes, and no one talks about these weather events affecting the economy at a whole. And I'm kind of surprised, like, the environmental groups haven't pushed this angle enough.
That's a good point. I mean, climate change is a big issue for us. We try to focus on the impacts to the coast and how surfing could be totally screwed and the beaches could go away and bad stuff like that. We haven't talked a lot about it's going to cost you. I think because it's it's hard. It's a lot of studies have shown you put money in now, you save money on the economy, as a whole, because all these disasters are so expensive. But to somehow say to someone your tax money, I don't know, it's nebulous, right? It's not a clear.
I feel like they have to find these individual human stories to bring them out a bit more to show the real impact.
I mean, flooding is a great one.
Yeah. I mean, South Street Seaport, after Hurricane Sandy, how long did it take those businesses to get back up and running? Yeah. It's crazy.
And luckily I did see a study that once people either see it or are affected by a big storm or a fire, they're suddenly their eyes are open and they're like, oh, this is real.
I mean, farmers, A lot of I have